Okay, Kevin, where should I put it? You said take the lectern.
That was good.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everyone this morning?
Good.
Oh, come on. How's everybody this morning?
Great.
Great. Okay, I like that. My topic this morning is the spiritual journey. And the idea for this message came to me the last time I was here, because in the little discussion group before service, we were talking a lot about how each person had come to be here and come to be seeking a truth that they could use and live with. So that was an interesting discussion. And I realized in thinking about this that each of us comes to our truth in unique ways. And the paths that we travel are all as unique as we are. And each person is very unique. And as we find the truth, we may find seemingly common truths, but our understanding of it and our practice of it will be very different because we are unique individuals. So I thought this morning I would talk just a small bit about my own spiritual journey and some of the important things I've learned along the way. You can take these with a grain of salt. You can take these and just see if they make sense to you, the things that I've learned and how I learned them. Our journey can be easy or difficult. We might be like one man who wanted to travel, and he was walking along a California beach, and he was deep in prayer. And all of a sudden he said out loud, "Lord, please grant me one wish." And suddenly the sky clouded over him, and above his head, in a booming voice, he heard a booming voice of God say to him, "Because you have tried to be faithful to me in all ways, I will grant you one wish." So the man said, "Please, Lord, build a beautiful bridge to Hawaii so that I can build a bridge from here to Hawaii so that I can drive over any time I need to see the beauty there and find peace and serenity and alleviate any stress in my life." So God said, "Well, your request is very materialistic." He said, "Think of the logistics of that kind of undertaking, the supports required to reach the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, the concrete and steel it would take. I can do it, but it's hard for me to justify such an intervention just to satisfy your worldly desires." So he said, "Take a little more time and think of another wish, a wish that would truly invoke my mighty power to bless you." So the man thought about it for a long time and finally said, "Lord, I wish I could understand women. I want to know how they really feel, what they're thinking when they give me the silent treatment. I want to understand why they cry, what they mean when they say, 'oh, it's nothing.' And more important, how I can make a woman truly happy." And God's response, after a few moments,
Build
was,
the bridge. Build the bridge. I'll give you the bridge.
"You want 2 or 4 lanes on that bridge?"
Yeah.
So, hopefully our seeking is a little bit clearer and more successful than that. And back to my spiritual journey here. My start in life, aside from, there isn't really anything aside from spirituality, but my start in life was a bit rocky. I had a father who was raised in a very stern Mennonite family, and who felt that emotions were not to be displayed by men, the only acceptable emotion being anger. And so all the soft fuzziness didn't come out until he was much, much older and got past all of that. My mother was an emotionally disturbed woman who took refuge in prescription drugs and opioids. And she expressed nothing but emotion, so she compensated for him greatly. She was perpetually hostile and enraged, with self-esteem so damaged that she was really unable to show affection of any kind to anyone. So the emotional terrain in my childhood was extremely barren. No one said I love you in my family. There were no hugs. There were no, there was not a lot of quality time spent with my parents. It was a hugely dysfunctional family, and I grew up thinking I was flawed and unworthy in multiple ways. However, one of the high spots of my very young life was to go every weekend and stay with my maternal grandparents until I was about 9. And I went down and spent the weekend with them and went to a church there. And the church was a gospel church, which was basically New Testament teaching, all the lovely stories, both Old and New Testament stories, but stories about Daniel and the lion's den, Jonah and the whale, Jesus handing, the fish and the loaves story, and all of the wonderful things, that were, and I enjoyed it immensely. And I really liked it there, and it was a high spot in my life because over the weekend was very nice with my grandparents. So that happened until I was about 9, and when I was 9, we moved. And we moved too far away to go spend the weekends with my grandparents any longer. So I had been going to church every week, and my father felt that was important while my parents did not go to church. My father being up to here with religion as a boy, and my mother, I have no idea what she believed. But they didn't go to church, but my father felt it was important that I did, but he wasn't going to go, so I went to a Southern Baptist church now with some neighbors who were serious Southern Baptists. Well, that was very interesting. I went, and we had Sunday school before the service, and then I got to go hear the pastor speak. And this was different from what I'd heard before. This was about resist temptation, the devil's going to get you kind of stuff. And I was not real thrilled, but I kept going until I was about 13. When I was about 13, I never really became a member, and I remember I did ask a question in Sunday school one Sunday, because I listened, and I wanted to know what truth was. I did believe that God existed, I just didn't understand much about God, so I wanted to understand. And I learned that God was omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent, which meant everywhere present, all-knowing, and all-powerful. So I thought about it. And they talked a lot about the devil, so I raised my hand in Sunday school, and I get called upon, and I say, well, if God is everywhere present, where then is the devil? And the woman looked at me, and she went, well, that's an interesting question. You sit over there and sit over to the side for now, and we'll address it later because we're talking about something else today. And never got my question answered. So that happened, and then shortly thereafter, the very dynamic and very Southern Baptist minister who had built a multi-million-dollar youth center. This was a First Baptist church so it was a wealthy church, lots of people. He ran off with the church secretary. And $500,000 of the church's money, and they were both married to other people. So I'm an idealistic 13-year-old, and I said, I'm out of there.
Yeah, right.
I'm not just out of there, I am out of church. I am gone. I didn't discard God, but I this is not right. This is not right. So I left, and I never went back to church again. And at that point, I went on with my life, and I had, coming out of the background I came out of, I had huge self-esteem issues, I had treacherous relationships, and I went on and on and on. And I was living in South Florida growing up, and at some point I went in the Army for a time. I came out and my life crashed. Now the way I'd been dealing with my issues, and I had lots of issues back then, the way I'd been dealing with my issues up till then was to stuff them in a room. I just stuffed all my emotions in a room. Stuff. And I stuffed them. And every once in a while, the room would get too full. So I would have a weekend where I isolated myself. I cried all weekend. I sobbed. I was in pain. I did all of that. And then by Monday, I'm back ready to go into the world, and I stuffed and locked the room again.
Mm-hmm.
And I did this periodically for a long time. Finally, when I get to be about 35, I'm living in Seattle now, my room got too big. It could not be contained anymore. So now I am just in chronic pain, basically, you know. And so I covered it over, I smoothed it over, and just sort of went around in a rather deadened, numb state. And I went through motions of life, and, you know, I wasn't a totally open wound, but I was not a happy person at all. And that went on for some time. Then, through I moved back to North Florida. I moved to North Florida for the first time, actually, and found myself eventually in a religious science church. So I won't go into the long story about how that happened, but it did happen, and I got there, and because I was invited to play the piano on Sundays. That was my excuse. And I've got to tell you, I was an unhappy enough person that while I was playing the piano, which is one of the most joyful things in my life, people came up to me and said, "Are you sick? Is something wrong?" Because I never smiled. I never smiled. Obviously, whatever was going on inside of me was written all over my face. And so that went on for a while, and I danced on the edge of that teaching for a couple of years until I heard enough that I was, because after all, and this, you know, this was organized religion after all. I mean, it wasn't small and loosely organized, but it was organized. And, you know, I remembered the story I heard about the devil and God walking on a beach. You know, they're walking on a beach, and God finds this beautiful thing, this gorgeous, glowing book. It's just pure truth. And he picks it up, and he's leafing through it, and it's actually emanating a glow. It's like this bright object, and he's leafing through it. And the devil goes, "Oh, here, give it to me, I'll organize it for you." So that was my take on things. Yes. So I was there, and I went along for a couple of years, and then I got really serious about wanting to learn. There had been some turnover in ministers and whatnot, but I ran into someone on my way to work who had gone to that church, and she said, "Where are you going on Sundays?" And I had actually stopped going. There was some turmoil with the minister left, and it was kind of dying, and it wasn't really lively or anything, and there were no classes anymore or whatever, so I didn't go. So I went. She said, "I'm not going." I told her, "I'm not going anywhere," and she said, "You've got to go hear Jewel." Some of you know her. Yes. And I said, "Who's Jewel?" And she said, "Oh, you've got to go hear her. She moved to St. Augustine a few years ago, and she's just started a small group that just got out of her home, and they're meeting at the Holiday Inn on US 1. Go see her. She is worth hearing." And something resonated within me. And that Sunday, I got a friend of mine, and we went down. It was the Sunday following, or before. It was the Sunday before 4th of July weekend that year in 1985. And she was talking on Declare Your Independence. And I went in and I thought, "Oh my God, this woman is speaking to me. She's speaking to me. How did I was flabbergasted."
Yeah.
And so I started going, dare I say religiously, I started going every week. I went every week. It wasn't yet chartered. They got chartered. I took classes. I started taking one class, and I was taking two classes, and then I was becoming a practitioner, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll do that. But I I was not going to be a minister. It's not, but I wanted to take the minister's class because it was the next class. And I asked her, I said, can I take the minister's class and not become a minister? She says, absolutely. I said, good. So I took the class. But I didn't realize that what I was doing was shopping. I was looking around and talking to ministers of that time. I was going to conferences and talking to ministers and going, how did you become a minister? Why did you become a minister? How is it being a minister? I was talking to people. So I was actually, I was internally processing without admitting I was doing it. Self-denial is a wonderful tool. Anyway, so I took a few classes. I started working on me. I started looking within. I started doing what they suggested because they said the light's within you. The power's within you. You're co-creative with the infinite. And whoa, okay. So I started trying it out and my life transformed. Not in a day, not in an hour, not in a week, but over time. And the path, the travel was joyous. It was great. I was grateful. And I kept unloading and unloading and unloading and unloading and unloading and unloading. And I got lighter and lighter and lighter. And it's an endless process, so I continue with that. But I learned a whole lot of stuff. That's very neat stuff. And that's what I want to share with you today. So I'm going to get to what I've learned. The first thing I learned that's very valuable. In fact, my affirmation about that was, and this is an old affirmation, I learn and grow, I teach and share. I love freely and experience great joy. I allow myself to enjoy the process. And I do. Because joy is the most infallible sign of the presence of God within us. I learned that God doesn't make any junk. God doesn't make a mistake. So none of us are less than anything or anyone. We are all magnificent masterpieces unfolding. I learned that. When I learned it about myself, I could see it for others then. I learned that this God, Spirit, is everywhere present, all-powerful and all-knowing. And that the only thing that exists anywhere is spirit. Sometimes not well understood, but spirit. And I came to understand that the mechanism of creation for the infinite and for myself is consciousness, thought. And I use the word consciousness because it's not just the fleeting thought that goes through one's mind. It is the thought that is embedded deeply as a belief, that you embody, that you exemplify, that becomes your truth in your life, and the manifestations in your life come out of that. That's what I learned. I too, if spirit is everywhere, I too then am spirit and form. And because I'm cognizant of myself and self-aware, and what a miracle that is, I am co-creative with the infinite. Scary idea, but true. The scary thing about it is they've done studies and more people are afraid of success than are afraid of failure. So whatever I think and believe deeply, which equates to thought backed by feeling, becomes manifest in my life or stays in place. Wow. If we get that, we don't need much else. Okay. Think about it. Whatever you believe about your life is true. It may not be true for me, but it's true for you. You see it and then you confirm that whatever you believe is true because you see it. We don't realize that the belief is the cause and what we see is an effect. So we get cause and effect mixed up a lot. I see that, so I say it's true. Well, it's true because I believe it'll happen. I believe it's real. I learned that there is power in a kind of prayer. And I say prayer, but not prayer as an apology or a supplication or petitioning, not that kind of prayer. A prayer, an affirmative prayer, that is filled with an affirmation of what is eternally true and thanksgiving for the spiritual law. The law of cause and effect is the one I'm talking about. I've learned to strive to fully experience now, this moment, and not dwell in the future or the past. And leave later to later, is the way I put it. I've learned to enjoy the process. To not sweat the small stuff. And one of the key things I've learned is to bless my humanity along with my divinity. And to forgive myself if I make an error or step out of line, which I mean get angry or one of those less than desirable emotions happen to me, because they do. I'm human. And frustration and whatnot. And I forgive myself and move on. I'll do better next time. It's okay. What it relieved me of was I no longer need to be perfect. I don't need to correct anybody else if I see them doing something wrong, which was a nasty habit I used to have. I don't need to do that. I don't need to impose that because I'm doing it to myself, do it to other people. I don't need to do any of that. I don't need to be right. It's okay. And I learned that I may not be right all the time. Ooh. And that's okay too. That's blessing my humanity along with my divinity. I have learned to pay attention to what is good and not give a lot of attention to what is not. And as I've learned to love and value myself more, I'm able to see others as valuable and love them freely. Because I've learned that we can only love another as deeply as we love ourselves. And I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm not talking about that kind of love. I'm talking about an innate confidence, calm, and peace, being comfortable in your own skin and liking who you are. That kind of value for yourself. It feels good, doesn't it? As I said, God don't make no junk. To love ourselves in spite of errors and perceived imperfections is downright holy. It is. We are manifestations of spirit. We are creations of God. And we have that divine spark within each of us. We have that. We are that. That is glorious. And I give thanks for it every day of my life. I'm humbled and exalted at the same time. Hugely humble about it. Hugely awed. I'll get to awe in a minute, but I've gained empathy and compassion and patience and optimism through these understandings. I've shed tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of false ideas, limiting ideas that impeded my experience of life and blocked me in. And I've learned something I call spiritual self-discipline. Spiritual self-discipline means finding value in every day. It means to move in harmony, sit up straight, listen intently, speak honestly, and be present in all we do without judgment. To live spiritually is to respect our actions, our words, our thoughts, and the life within and around us. Out of all of this, it is most important that we understand that we are divine and that we come to love and appreciate ourselves. It is key. We can be much better people for other people from that basis. I talked to somebody once who was quasi-famous, and I don't remember his name, fortunately, at this point. But he was altruistic. He dedicated his life to helping poor people and the hungry and whatnot, and was helping people. And I talked to him once at length. And he said, no, it wasn't Jesus. No, someone I could meet. I'm not that old. Thank you. So I was talking with him, and I said, well, you must feel really good, about all these people and what you can do for them and what you do for them. And he said, and he was being honest with me. He said, no, I hate them. He actually said that to me. He said, I hate every one of them. I said, why do you do it? He said, well, I'm doing what I should do. I didn't say I liked it. Now, my feeling is he did not have a lot of self-esteem for himself. So he could not care about the people for whom he was caring any more than that. That's what I'm talking about. And lack of self-appreciation is but a form of ignorance. An author named John White said, at the heart of all things is a spark, an impulse, a sense of the divine. And it's our job to discover it. And the founder of the teaching that I embrace, Ernest Holmes, he wrote this. He wrote, God's love is in us right now in our scrambled spiritual disorder, our mangled inner mass. With all our unsorted clutter, accepts us with all our potential for doing real evil and all our fascinating flaws that make us such interesting people. We must accept ourselves totally as the spiritual stew that we are. That's a good beginning.
Yeah.
We can spend every day in awe, just awe that the sun rose. It's such a beautiful day, that the birds are chirping, that we can be here, that I can walk across a parking lot, that I am sentient and self-aware, that I'm here this morning with you all. There's a lot of cause for awe. Wayne Dyer puts it this way, spend some time every day in awe, in total, complete awe. Be thankful for your hands, your invisible, incomprehensible, awesome mind. Treat all of life with reverence and awe, and know that it is all working purposefully. A few minutes a day in total awe will contribute to your spiritual awakening faster than any metaphysics course. How's that for practical? We can live in a state of constant celebration because we have so much to celebrate. So much to celebrate. So much to be thankful for. We have life itself to celebrate with every breath, with its possibilities, its gifts, its ups and its downs, its unending series of surprise packages, its glory and wonder and beauty. We have life. We have each other to celebrate. In an infinite hall of mirrors reflecting our grandeur and our divinity, singing together with joy and dancing together with love. That's what we're doing. And Wayne Dyer again says, remember, we do not have to struggle. We do not have to fight. We do not have to win. We only have to know. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Look within for answers. Look within for questions. Look within and listen in the silence. Know that you are a masterpiece unfolding. Respect, value, and be kind to yourselves, please. I recommend choosing a spiritual path or continuing to pursue a spiritual path that makes sense to you and committing yourself to spiritual practices that feel good and lift your soul. We are all on a spiritual journey, whether we know it or not.